as long as the last time, however. Thankfully, much has changed. Much has changed. Starting with the fact that I'm standing up. I thought it'd be different. I thought maybe it'd be better on my back because I'm an old man at heart. Actually, no, I'm a child at heart. I'm an old soul and an old body. At least it feels that way. But also, my goal is to have a different haircut in every single video that you guys see me in. I'm just kidding, but you can tell it obviously shows that things change pretty rapidly in my life. Well, a lot of things still stay the same because I'm control as an INFP who's often in his FI-SI grip. You probably know a thing or two about that yourselves. If you're INFPs on this channel, and if you are, I say welcome. Welcome back, fellow idealists and dreamers. And if there are any ENFJs watching, hey, how you doing? My name's Michael. I like long walks on the beach, deep conversations. I'm just kidding. But since we were away, since we were here last, we've changed the name of the channel. We've changed the name to Fine Sight to go along with the function stack of the INFP, that being introverted feeling, extroverted intuition, introverted sensing, and extroverted thinking. And mainly, I think it goes along very well with what we're trying to do here at this channel, first and foremost, that you're looking at such a fine sight. I'm just kidding. It would never be about that, says the guy in a turtleneck. Come on. No. The reason I want to do fine sight, the reason I wanted to make that the name of this channel is, one, that it's just really cool, and I hope that this can be a fine sight. But primarily, for starters, number one, that each INFP, and really just each individual who comes and watches this channel, knows that you are a fine sight, you're a gift, you're a blessing, you matter, you are here for a reason, you're a gift. And number two, because we need to have that self-worth, we need to have that self-love to pick ourselves up and say, let's be better, let's do more, let's become the people we're supposed to become. But number two is, let's start chasing that. Let's idealize, let's dream of an even finer sight, of an even finer day, of a place somewhere 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road, 20 years down the road, of where we want to be as individuals, of how we want to impact society, of how we want to change the world. Let's envision that, and let's start becoming that. Hence the term fine sight. But ultimately, today we're here for the first lecture on the 5-part series of my own personal philosophy, which deals with INFPs. I call it the 5 pillars of the INFP. Now, today's first lesson on the first pillar is dealing with following. And I know it probably comes as a bit of a shock or a surprise. I mean, is he really saying that? Following. Following is the first pillar for the INFP. Not creativity, not determination, not individuality. No. Following. And we will see why. But this is the firm foundation that we need as INFPs to begin becoming impactful individuals individuals in the world. Following. Now, as you saw, I have my little journal here, my little notebook, that's going to guide me during this endeavor, during this quest, this adventure that we're going to go on together, and hopefully you can learn a thing or two from the guy wearing the turtleneck, which could be an anomaly. Probably doesn't happen very often, but I thought, hey, I'll try it. I'll be different, I'll be bold, I'll be a pragmatist, even though I'm supposed to be affiliative, but we're going to get to that too. Or maybe I just have SE Trickster and I don't know how to dress. You decide in the comments down below. So, that being said, I want to talk a little bit about just the main characteristics of INFPs, just for a brief 5 minutes before we get going. So, as I said before, the top 4 functions: introverted feeling, followed by a parent type of extroverted intuition, which is freaking awesome. I love extroverted intuition. Followed by introverted sensing in the child spot. So basically that's the 3rd slot. With introverted sensing, you're going to be all about your own experience and your past memories. And because it's in the child position, which means it's going to be happy-go-lucky, very positive, and we get caught in our FI-SI grip, which is our own comfort zone, quite a bit. Tell me about that. Happens to the best of us, though. Finally, in the 4th slot, the inferior function of extroverted thinking. And then we have the other 4 functions, which are basically the same. It's just extrovert, introverted, or switch. So extroverted feeling, introverted intuition, extroverted sensing, and finally introverted thinking. Oh no, INFPs don't have any thinking that's high, inferior, and demon. The 4th slot and the 8th slot. Guess what? We can think, we can rationalize, we can be intellectuals, though technically we are idealists, not intellectuals. That being said, INFPs are very smart, and we're going to get into that. So, my main teacher, aside from Carl Jung, of course, the great psychologist who, developed these analytical psychology functions, said they were frequencies, developed the idea of introversion and extroversion. Aside from the OG Carl Jung, I really like C.S. Joseph. Chase at C.S. Joseph. It's another YouTube channel, another website. You should go check him out because he goes so in-depth regarding the functions and the personality types and everything there has to do with typology and the psychology of Carl Jung. He's a very smart man. He's taught me a lot on this matter. I owe him a lot of thanks. I'm very grateful for his channel, so you should go check him out. Now, in regards to what Chase has to say about INFPs, this is how he types them. Regarding the 6 adjectives, the 6 dichotomies that he places value in for each type. Ultimately, INFPs are informative, responding, control-based, abstract, my personal favorite, affiliative, and interest-based. All 6 of those. So, Chase also writes, INFPs are philosophical. They have endless societal possibilities going on in their heads. They're future-focused and oriented, and they're searching for the ideal. Now, as I said before, INFPs, along with the other NF personalities, so ENFJ, INFJ, and ENFPs, alongside we INFPs, we make up the idealists, which is about 15% of the population, where INFPs, we're about 4%, usually is what I see, give or take. Now, the thing that I love about C.S. Joseph, and maybe you're familiar with him, the thing I I love about C.S. Joseph is that he calls us out for our faults, not our flaws, but our faults. Because, quite honestly, INFPs can become quite lazy. We can become quite selfish. We can become quite sad and affected by our moods. And it really bothers me that, well, there are so many comments and so many negative reactions to Chase about INFPs. They think he's too harsh on us, that he's too mean, that he hurts our feelings. Sometimes, folks, you need a good kick in the pants to get yourself going. Chase has done that for me. He's not my prime mentor, he's not the main example in my life, but his videos have helped me understand that sometimes I can be selfish, and sometimes I can be a pain in the butt to everybody else around me. You don't want to be that. You don't want to be a liability. You want to help others. That's what INFPs are all about. What's crazy though, because Chase has to fight off so many people that get overly emotional and get their feelings hurt, but he's repetitively said over and over and over again that INFPs are the most brilliant of the types. And that's not me coming here and saying, come to this channel, let's have tribalism, let's find our identity as INFPs and split off from everybody else because we're better, because we're more brilliant. That is not the case. Listen, I think there are smarter types. I think INTPs rationally and logically are much smarter to some extent, and it depends on the person, of course, but I know some very, very smart mathematical INTPs. But creativity-wise, INFPs, guys, we've got a lot going for us. We've got a lot going for us. And the thing that bothers me is, well, really, and we're going to get into this for a short period, but the INFP, or more so the MBTI community, often makes fun of INFPs, calls us dumb and lazy and childlike and living in a la-la land. And it's a stereotype that is very hurtful. And we need to stop. We need to stop. It's just ludicrous. And then, regarding INFPs, I was going to read from the 16 personalities page, but I'm gonna skip that part for now. I think if you're here, you know about INFPs pretty well. You're probably one yourself. If you want to go on 16personalities.com, you can, even though I don't fully agree with everything they have to say. That's just a little news flash there. Doesn't mean that I'm anti-MBTI Myers-Briggs, because obviously I'm an INFP and I'm talking to you and I want to interact with the MBTI community. But ultimately, there are some things that I disagree with regarding dichotomies, regarding that tribalism issue that we tend to think, oh, it's sensors versus intuitives, and oh, extroverts versus introverts, and, just all these stereotypes that are very harmful and are honestly not very true or accurate. So, that being said, I was going to say just that INFPs, really the main thing I was going to read there is that they're very idealistic, they're very people-oriented. People think of INFPs as being so quiet and shy and away from people, but no. We really want to help people, we really want to change the world, and we're not happy if we aren't doing so. We often feel, because we're idealists, we often feel that we're misunderstood, or no one thinks like us. And that's quite true, quite often. But ultimately, we can change the world. I'm not trying to be an INFP and say we are the most brilliant of the types, because I don't think that's fair. But I do think we're unique, as all other 15 of the personalities are unique and a benefit to society. And we need to start thinking outwardly instead of selfishly inwardly. So, without further ado, you're here regarding my 5 pillars, our 5 pillars the INFP 5 pillars, and the first pillar is following. So, followed by philosophy, fitness, forward, and fear. Following, philosophy, fitness, forward, fear. I like alliteration, if you hadn't noticed. Yes, I do. But the first thing we must start with is regarding those 6 dichotomy, those 6 adjectives that Chase uses to type the different personality types. And if you haven't, check out C.S. Joseph's website. I'll link it down below. You can go check out a typing grid, take a test. I think it's the best source for that on the internet, so that's what I'm referencing. But one of the words he uses is affiliative. And INFPs are affiliative by nature. Now, we need to understand what the definition of that is. I think that's very important. So, I've got that here for you. Affiliative is relating to the formation of social and emotional bonds with others, or to the desire to create such bonds. I'll read that one more time. Relating to the formation of social and emotional bonds with others, or to the desire to create such bonds. Which sounds very much so like I was talking about in regards to we want to help people. We want to be involved. We want to make a difference. We want to make a change. That's what we're about. Now, it's important that we understand that the often stereotypical version of what affiliative means and its counterpart, which would be pragmatic, it's different than what I just read. Because there's often a misuse or an incorrect definition used when talking about these two different words. So, it is not meaning that pragmatic equals non-trusting lone wolf, and affiliative equals blind, herd-following sheep, because often that is the case. You know, like my brother is an INTJ, and he's very pragmatic, but he often says that, oh, that's the case. He goes, you're affiliative, meaning me. You're going to follow along with whoever is in charge, whether it's the government, the doctor, the news outlet, the teacher. I'm going to follow whoever has the highest degree or who's in the highest position of authority. And while sometimes that can be the case, I'm often studying and looking for what is objective truth, what is my own philosophy. And some might say, well, that doesn't sound very INFP of you. Well, I can name many INFPs who are exactly the same way. Why do we have so many INFP philosophers and writers? I mean, St. Augustine, Soren Kierkegaard, George Orwell, Albert Camus, let's see what's more down, William Blake. These guys weren't exactly just falling willfully in line with the masses, doing exactly what the societal standards were. These guys were doing what they wanted to do because they believed in what they were doing. They were doing the right thing. They were forming their philosophy. It sounds pretty pragmatic if we're going to define pragmatic as, you know, being this lone wolf who doesn't agree with anybody. So we have to have the definitions right. Pragmatic is actually defined as dealing with things sensibly and realistically in a way that is based on practical rather than theoretical considerations. So it's much more straightforward. It's much more black and white and concrete to some extent. While I know INTJs would be mad that I said concrete with them because they are very abstract, as high intuition types are. But that being said, it's very straightforward, it's very logical, whereas we INFPs tend to be a bit extreme and a bit idealistic, obviously. And so that is the difference in that regard. I just wanted to clear that up to begin with. But basically what the difference is there is, with my brother being an INTJ and claiming that he's pragmatic, I mean, pretty much everyone who's pragmatic is an NI user in their top 4. In introverted intuition, the only two that aren't are INTPs and ENTPs. Those are both NE users, like us. But ultimately, NI is going to be inward, self-focused, future-oriented, but the best results for individual growth. Whereas NE is very, focused on the world that is external to the mind. So I'll always have these conversations with my brother. I'll be like, I can't wait for, 5-10 years from now where I've got a wife and kids. I'm involved in the community. My goals are being met. I'm doing the right thing. I'm making an impact on the world around me. I'm molding young men and women. I'm, doing some things as a servant of, the community, as a servant of my church, as a servant of my God. Because I want to help the world. And often when Joe talks about the future, Joe being my brother, he's very straightforward, and he's like, it's going to be me and my wife. I don't know if I even want kids. I'm going to work my job in finance. I'm going to sit in my cubicle and do my math and make my money and be successful. And then me and my wife are going to do what we want to do. And that's that. He doesn't talk outwardly, doesn't talk about societal future in the landscape politically or philosophically, or what he's going to be involved with in regards to the community. And that doesn't mean that INTJs can't do that. Of course they can. But that's not his first and foremost idea. That's not what's on his mind and heart 24/7, which I think is pretty much, if you're like me, it's on my mind quite a bit. So, it's funny because INFPs are definitely background types. Us and INTPs are definitely like the most background of background types. But, we have this FI-SI grip. We're often alone. There's always the stereotype of there's sad boys and soft boys and sad girls and soft girls. I don't even know if those are things, but, we're these little fairy children people who wander around in bare feet and read poetry all day down by the river. That's the INFP stereotype. Like we're these lone wolves. But the funny thing is, that's actually not the case. And I think this is maybe why so many INFPs are stereotyped as being so sad and depressed, even suicidal, which we're going to get to in a second. But it's mainly because we're not doing our job, we're not doing our duty, and because we get disappointed by looking at the world, we then isolate ourselves. And if we isolate ourselves, we can't be an impact in the community. Thus, we're going to be wildly unhappy because we're not doing what we're here to do. Now, obviously, some people deal with mental illness and other problems, and I'm not trying to eliminate those things or look over those things. Some people have clinical, severe depression or OCD or schizophrenia or anything, like the things that are very, very severe. And if that's the case, I'm not trying to call you out. You obviously have something that you need to seek medical help with and talk to a therapist and, obviously treat. And I'm sorry if that's something you're dealing with. But of course, each person's different. I think there are a lot of INFPs, though, that are very self-focused and scared and fearful and sometimes lazy and a little too comfortable. And because we do this to ourselves, I being one of them, myself being one of them, we end up hurting ourselves and isolating ourselves and making ourselves more depressed, but we'll get to that. So, in regards to the stereotypical INFP, we're often seen as emotional, immature, the poet alone in his or her room reading for fun, depressed, and often suicidal. And my plea to the MBTI community is that we have to stop with this nonsense, because it is complete nonsense. You know, it just hurts. I know a lot of people who've either tried to commit suicide or committed suicide, and it's not something that should ever be a joke or a meme. I go on these MBTI communities, these things on Instagram and Reddit and Facebook, and there's so many memes about INFPs wanting to commit suicide. Why would we ever joke about something like that? But also, it's influencing the way INFPs feel about themselves. And it's ridiculous. Because INFPs, you are a gift. You matter. You're a huge part of society. You're an integral, something like that, part of society. You matter. Your ideas could possibly change the world. But we're so caught up laughing about INFPs being sad in their room wanting to commit suicide. Go check it out. There are memes all over the place. It's really silly. It's really sad. We INFPs, we have DE inferior, extroverted thinking inferior, so we care what people think about us. Sometimes a little too much if we're not developed enough. But we care what people think, and so if we start seeing in the MBTI community that, INFPs are just pathetic, and they're stupid, and they're lazy, and they're dumb, they're childlike, and they live in a la-la land, and they're going to commit suicide one day, then how are we going to grow? And I'm not blaming everybody else, all the other 15 types. But INFPs, just reject that garbage, okay? Start listening to people that actually know what they're talking about. Start reading, start forming your own philosophies and foundations, and you can do great things, and you'll just be happier. You'll feel like you have a calling and a mission, and we're going to get to that. But, I'm coming out of a season where, and obviously 2020 has been very difficult on everyone for its own reasons. It's been a rough year, but I went through a very tough season, a very tough stretch of time, where I was just struggling so much with my own self-worth and how I valued myself and how I saw myself, and I was struggling with intense depression, intense fear of everything, and everything was negative and sad, and I had no backbone and no discipline, no structure, no energy. And these memes and these stereotypes, they made me even worse off, because I just thought, well, I'm an INFP. Yeah, I'm creative, but I'm never going to finish anything. Yeah, I'm an INFP, but I'm never going to do anything. My life's never going to matter. I'm living in an unrealistic world of fantasy and dreaming. That's not true. That's not true. So if anything, that's what I'm here to do, is to try and help you. If you're going through a tough time, if you think you're worthless as an INFP, you're not. You're 4% of the population. You are a gift. You have unique capabilities that might just change the world for the better. For the better. It's important. It's important that INFPs know who to follow, who they're following, what they're following. And I'm not here claiming that I know who you should follow. The only thing I'll ever say to that is, I'm a Christian. I believe Jesus Christ is the Savior of the world. I believe He's my Savior. He died for me. I believe the Bible is objective truth. I love it. I'm not afraid to say that. I been that way. I've been saved for, it's going on like 8 years now, and the Lord is good. But that's not what my channel's here for, because I know a lot of people don't hold that to the same standard as I do. They may not believe that as an objective truth. And so, whatever you believe in, find what is an objective truth to you, apply it to your life, and start becoming a better person. So, this isn't just about religion either. Like, I'm going to talk maybe a bit about Jesus, but I'm not preaching at you. I'm not trying to tell you that that is the one way or the other. Sorry, something popped up on my screen. Okay. Yeah, but ultimately, I want you to discover truths regarding philosophy, great writers, great teachers, and I'll tell you why. So, everyone is following something. Even those pragmatic INTJs, they are. You know, my brother, who's this pragmatic INTJ, lone wolf, I know exactly what I'm doing, blah, blah, blah. He still follows psychologists and neuroscientists and certain teachers of finance and pastors and, you know, all these different people. People talk about, oh, NI, they just know exactly what they want. Yeah, but they're not born with it intrinsically. That has to be developed, and they have to obviously bring in those thoughts and that creativity through their SE. Their SE is going to fuel their NI. So, it's, while they can have cool, abstract random thoughts, ultimately they have to be drawn from somewhere. That's my view, at least. Now, even the most self-sufficient individual still has to follow certain leaders and rulers and philosophies. You could be somewhere way out there in the mountains or the boonies, on your farm, with your guns, living off the land, away from society. You still have to pay bills, you still have to possibly interact with locals, you still have to go try and sell some of your crops, you still have to be a citizen and have identification and all these things, so we're always following someone to some extent. There's just no way around that. You know, think about work, think about laws, think about religion and relationships. Those all have to be interactive because humans are social beings. We're interactive creatures. I think that's a fact. So, despite my intrigue for rationalist philosophers like Leibniz and Spinoza and Descartes, which I find very cool and abstract and trippy, way out there, similar to Jung in a lot of ways. Ultimately, I do think that we can only learn by observing and by, acting and experiencing and ultimately following. Thus, I'd fall more in the line with empiricism, like John Locke's tabula rasa, the blank slate, which is funny because C.S. Joseph often types John Locke as an INFP, or at least he believes that. He's typed on PDB as an INTP, just so you guys know. But very well could be an INFP, and it's similar schools of thought. Obviously, INTPs and INFPs being similar in some ways. Not every way, obviously. But the first pillar is following because it fills up all the other pillars. It has to be the foundation. So, I'll say that again. The first pillar is following because it has to be the foundation. Why is that? Well, gosh dang it. Sorry about that. I live in a noisy household. Sorry, ASMR community. I apologize. I hope that didn't ruin the vibes. But anyway, we're talking about why the first pillar is following. It's because it fills up all the other pillars. It has to be the foundation. It is the initial sound structure. I talked about my Christian faith. Jesus in the Bible talks about building your house on the rock instead of the sand. The rock being the firm foundation, the sand not. Well, ultimately, this has to be our rock. We have to know where we're seeking truth, where we're getting truth, what we're filling ourselves up with in order to do the following parts of the following pillars, and form our own philosophies. So, just a little, slight plug here. Tune into the 5th lecture on this topic to see why fear, which is the 5th pillar, is the pillar that fuels all the other pillars. So, following fills the other pillars. Fear fuels the other pillars. And I'd say that one's going to be my most important lecture of the whole thing. That's maybe why it's last, but it goes along with what I've learned this year, how important fear is. But back to following. Okay, so because we're a high judging types, and I know if you're MBTI community, if you're not too studied on this, you go, well, the dichotomies say that I'm an INFP. Perceiving, I'm not a judging type, I'm not an INFJ. I went down that path already. It's like, wow, that's why I don't always love MBTIs, because we are actually like one of the highest judging types. We have FI as our dominant function, as our hero function. So, that makes us pretty judgy. We know what we like pretty much instantaneously, and it's hard to change that. Although, it can. And because we have SI, which is personal experience and past memories, it's in the happy-go-lucky child slot of the 3rd position of the stack. We know exactly what we like, and sometimes we get too comfortable and we like stuff too much. This is why we're a control type. Going back to those original 6 dichotomies that I talked about, those 6 adjectives that are listed on C.S. Joseph's site. So, a few examples for INFPs. Why we're control. I mean, we go out to the same restaurant and we order the same meal every time. Maybe you do this differently, maybe you've evolved past this and good for you. But like every time I go to Panera Bread, I get the same thing. Bacon turkey bravo. Half of that and then the half cup of soup, but you don't care. It's good though. We watch the same movies over and over and over again. Hence my first INFP video of like my favorite INFP movies. Because while I watch a lot of new movies, or at least usually I do, I love to find movies that I can put into that group of favorites and then watch them all over again. It's my birthday week. Usually on my birthday week I love to watch some of my favorite films. Like That Thing You Do is in the list. Catch Me If You Can with Leo. I love the Lord of the Rings movies, so I'm watching those right now. So just when I have a little bit of free time, that's what I do. And by free time I mean when I've done all my other reading and stuff, because that's way more important and I'm going to get to that. But you gotta have some time to relax and enjoy yourself once in a while, of course. We go on vacation to the same places. Like as a kid we went to Disney World at the same resort like 8 times. Maybe like 5 times, I don't know. But we went to the same spot over and over and over and rode the same rides and had the same experience because most of us were all control-based types in my family. Now, we love routine and rituals and tradition. And that doesn't always apply to every INFP. But we are primarily more so control than movement. And if you've figured out that you need to break out of that and not always have that apply to your life, then good for you, because that's a great step in the right direction. But ultimately, this control, this comfort zone, it can hurt us. It can hurt us. It can be a negative thing for many reasons. This can sometimes make us selfish, and that does not align with what INFPs are supposed to be, what we are. We're not supposed to be selfish. We're supposed to be about others. It's not what we're called to be. So, how can we be positive, society-changing leaders if we were... Well, how can we be positive, society-changing leaders if we're too focused on our own comfort? They don't correlate, they don't match, they don't work. Which is why, once again, there are probably so many depressed, I use that lightly, INFPs who have isolated themselves out of fear, out of anger, out of just uncertainty, out of doubt, and a self-hatred almost. And they can't shine that light within them, all those creative ideas, because they've put themselves in a bad position. Now, to get a bit cliche, you are what you eat. You are what you consume. What you put in, that's what you'll get out. Feed the good wolf or the good dog, the two dogs that are battling inside of you. Feed the good one. Your mind is a sponge. And I say all of those things because this applies to following. We must put good, influential tools into our minds if we are to grow, if we are to become better, if we are to succeed, if we are to attain that fine sight that we're envisioning for our futures. Chase over at CS Joseph always claims that if you're an INFP and you aren't reading, what the heck are you doing? If you're an INFP and you're not reading, what are you doing? And he doesn't mean like YA fiction and rom-com movies and romantic popular books that you see at the front of Barnes & Noble. Like, those are all fine, just like a movie once in a while, just for fun, just for enjoyment. But ultimately, that is not something that's going to really help you understand the world better, understand yourself better, and get some creative ideas. No. The thing that's important is that we're reading things that can really impact us. Historical fiction, great philosophical writers, philosophy in general, politics, historical stuff that we can really use to develop and understand the world better and understand ourselves better. And then if you add in some form of religion, and primarily if you go to the Bible, you'll learn some valuable lessons that are important regarding our own society, regarding your own self-worth. So many important things there, so many important truths and virtues, but, that's up to you. One thing, and this goes along with that early video I made with the movies, and I like those movies a lot. Hold on. Sorry. I shouldn't have done this at like 7 o'clock when my family's all home, but I prepared this for the last few hours when I had the time, and I wanted to get it done because I'm eager to share this with you, so I'm sorry if the vibes haven't been quite as normal. I'll make sure to improve that next time. But that being said, I was thinking about some of the videos and the movies that I had mentioned, and while of course those are all near and dear to my heart, I think I did a wee bit of a disservice to you, to some extent. I do think a movie like Dead Poets Society, Emperor's Club, some of the ones that were more educational based, about having values, doing the right thing, I think those are all very necessary movies, and those are impactful movies that you can learn from and grow from. But some of the other ones, and there are truths in every movie, there are themes in every movie that point to some form of virtue. But often when we think about the main INFP characters, first I think of Charlie Calmecas from Perks of Being a Wallflower. I love Charlie. I think of Holden Caulfield from The Catcher in the Rye by J.D. Salinger. I think of young adults, young boys and girls in high school who are struggling to understand the world, who don't understand their place, who are these daydreamers that don't really fit in. And I think in the INFP community we can often can see that and go, that's like me. That was me in high school, that's me. But what about, the 20-somethings, 30-somethings, or just the grown adults that still haven't really figured their stuff out? And I know that's sometimes the case. There's such a stereotype, too, to push this young, childlike type of representation of INFPs in film and in literature, that I really had to step back and find some movies that you see adult grown men or grown women, INFPs, not only having these big goals and not only feeling a little different, but really making an impact on the world, being who they're supposed to be. The evolved INFP. They're not in stage 1. They're not a Charmander. They're Charizards. Wow, I sound nerdier and nerdier on this channel, I swear. But Pokemon's cool, come on. So, I think it's important that we find those characters, we find these people in history, these writers, these philosophers, these great teachers who can inspire us to become whatever we want to be. And I know that if you're an INFP, you want to help people. You want to make the world a better place. So, find people that inspire you. Find elders and mentors that inspire you, people that are older than you that you can look to and say, I want to be like that person one day. I want to live my life that way. I want to love my husband or my wife, my daughter, my son, my community that way. Because if we're looking at kids that are younger than us, weaker than us, more lost than us, that's just going to put us back into a downward spiral of depression and negativity. So, I just say that, take that with a grain of salt. Like, that's just my experience from that lately. And so, I hope to do a video series, maybe in between these or maybe later, where I rank my 5 most influential INFP fictional characters and the 5 most influential INFPs in history for me personally, and maybe to lead you guys to some cool movies, books, or ideas. So be on the lookout for that. Another plug there. But you need to, of course, like I said, align yourself with some form of objective truth. Find what you believe and believe it. And why? If you research, if you begin reading philosophy, you begin reading religious texts, historical texts, political stuff, historical fiction, stuff about history, and you choose them over the FISI grip, the easy cartoon or movie, you choose those consistently, you're going to learn so much more. You're going to be so much better. You're going to be wiser. You're going to feel like a year later you're going to look back and go, oh my gosh, I was a child a year ago. Now I feel like a grown man or a grown woman. I have such a better sense of self. Just by starting with this initial foundational pillar of choosing who and what to follow, you will have a direction. You will find a calling. You will move past depression. You will have a renewed sense of self-discipline, maybe the first time in your life. And you will have a solid, I don't know what that says, a solid foundation for the rest of your life. And it's as simple as just being a bit disciplined, enjoying the pursuit of knowledge, filling yourself up with truth, and following the right people, finding people in your life that can inspire you and you can look towards and say, I want to be like him, I want to be like her. And that is step 1. So, guys, if you liked this video, please hit the subscribe button. Please let me know. Leave a comment down below. Tell me what you liked, what you didn't like. Sorry if you can hear the vacuum. vacuum downstairs or hear my dad yelling in the distance. But all that being said, my name is Michael. This is my channel. This is our channel, the New and Improved Fine Sight, so that we can understand that each person is a gift, and each of us has a goal that we should start chasing to become better for the rest of society. So, I'll see you guys next time for pillar number 2. Peace out.